Hi there, this is Ted M. Young, also known as Jitter Ted. Welcome to the series of recordings from my live coding series where I'm developing KidBank, the money tracker for kids. This is episode 3 where I implement importing transactions from a CSV file that was exported from an Excel spreadsheet. That spreadsheet is what I've been using to keep track of my son's savings and spending, and is basically what I want to replace with this application. Enjoy! What I have up on the screen here is basically the CSV that I exported from the Excel spreadsheet. I'm going to just trim out some of this extra stuff. Actually, you know what? I'm going to leave that in there because that would be a good edge case. So what we have is comma separated. Now, something I just realized is that I have some transactions where I've added the interest, but that's something that I'm going to want to calculate automatically. I have a story for that for calculate interest credit. So for now, when I import, I want to ignore those, but we'll worry about that later. So here I'm going to import the CSV as is, and I'll have another story for import CSV ignoring interest credit transactions. And this is going to be dependent on calculating interest credit. So depends on calc interest. Okay. In general, you don't want stories to have dependencies, but sometimes that happens. That's okay. So let's look at the structure of this. We basically have, fortunately for better or for worse, and Excel didn't put any quotes around it. I'm not sure if that was an option when I exported it, but so I have a couple of choices. I could do sort of just a dirt cheap, simple, comma separated splitting, and that might be okay. I could also use some libraries, but I think this is really straightforward enough that I don't want to bother bringing in a full library just to parse what's a pretty basic comma separated file. What would be interesting is actually implement it, and then maybe later I could look at what it would look like to do that. So this is interesting. So when we think about where this functionality of importing the text into the domain, the comma separated conversion, so basically from a list of comma separated transactions to the core domain, that's another adapter. And so what we're going to do is we're going to basically start test driving an adapter. So the other question is where is that something that's actually loaded at startup time? So so one option is when the application starts up, I can load in this list of transactions. Another option is basically I paste it into the web UI. Now, if I think about if I were just doing this locally, having a local file might be fine. But since I'm eventually going to deploy this to the cloud, probably be nice to have some button somewhere that says import transactions. So I think that's going to be my assumption, which means it's basically going to fall under the web adapter, which is where that functionality is going to go. So that's where we'll put that code. Now that we figured out where that's going to go, we want to be able to do is figure out how that's going to get loaded into account. So let's take a look at account. And sometimes it's useful to just look at the structure of the class, like what methods it has, because sometimes you can get too involved with how things are organized. So basically we have some methods for balance, deposit, spend, and add new transaction. Actually, add new transactions shouldn't be public. This should be private. And let's just make sure that I haven't broken anything by doing that. So while that's running, we can look at this. So we're able to get the transactions. I'm actually going to turn off So what's nice is now we're looking at this, and we're not looking at anything. We're basically looking at the public API for account and all our tests pass. Have we committed? Is there anything? So that was just made private. All right, so I don't need to do a commit on that. Okay, so let's turn off our structure. And so far we have no way of sort of bulk loading transactions. And so the question is do we have a CSV importer that takes a list of strings and returns a list of transactions? So that's one way to go. So I think that's probably, because the other way is it directly puts them into the account. But I think we want to have some way of loading in a bunch of transactions. Let's go to our test. Oops. And let's go and create a new test. So now we're going to have an account test that I don't think we've had before. Because of the test, it's unit test. So what we want is, what if we just want to load a single line? So sort of a degenerate collection. So load single row CSV should add transaction to account. So what we're eventually going to assert, so let me go create an account object. What we're eventually going to assert is that our transactions, we can start off simply with just saying it's going to have a size of 1. We know we're going to load 1 transaction. And the string for our CSV is, I think I have this. Yes, smart paste from IntelliJ, it escaped our double quotes. Oh, but that wasn't what I want. I want to load that. Right, because I remember we didn't have any double quotes in the CSV file that was exported. So we've got a row of CSV. What we expect is that when we somewhere load this in, so we'll call it CSV Importer. So a new CSV Importer, and then import, and we're always going to have some collection of strings. So basically be CSV list. Okay, so we're going to create, so we have a single string. We'll put that in a collection of strings. Okay, so we've got our string single row in a list of strings. And let's go ahead and create this class. So this is not a domain, this is actually an adapter. And initially it's only going to be used by the web adapter, so we'll put it there. And it's going to have, oops, come on. Oh, can I not use import here because it's a keyword? Darn it. How about import from? There we go. Okay. I'm like, why isn't it letting me create an import method? Darn it, because it's a Java keyword. By the way, side note, in case you don't keep up with Java language new stuff that's coming up, Brian Getz, who's at Oracle working on the Java language, one of the architects, has a proposal about creating new keywords that basically are hyphenated, which I think is an awesome proposal. Okay, so we're creating this method. Eventually import. So import is weird. Maybe it's translate, transform, CSV transformer. I'll leave that for now. So the question is, what's this going to, so it's going to import from the list, and it's basically going to give us a list of transactions. And for now, we will return empty. Empty list. Okay. And so we'll hold on to this as transactions. So I guess I was taking too big of a jump because we have this separate CSV importer. So maybe this isn't an account test. Because what we're trying to do, so yeah, because if we have account somehow rely on the CSV importer, then that pulls it into the domain. And actually, I don't want that to happen. So somewhere in the adapter, we're going to have, so really, this test doesn't make any sense because we're not going to load a CSV right into an account. We're going to go through an adapter. So do I want to stay in account test, which means what I'm really testing is, can I load a bunch of transactions in at once? Can I basically do bulk import? And I think that's actually what I want to do. But I'm just going to load transactions should have account. Know about those transactions. So basically this is going to be account.load, and then it's basically going to be a list of transactions. I guess it could be a set, because that's what we store internally. Because certainly there are going to be no duplicates. So, but we'll see that later. And for now, this is going to, so we'll basically do account new, create one of those, hold on to a variable, and then we're going to assert that account dot transactions is basically equal yeah, I'm a bit unsure what we're going to quite do here, but let's transactions to load, something like that. And this is going to be a set of transaction. And we'll just put this as empty set for now. So this will fail. Actually, this might succeed. Actually, I'm curious, will this fail or succeed? Because it starts out being empty, but it's not going to be equal to? Yeah, I guess it is. Okay. I don't want that. So how about I just do that? Because I don't want to unintentionally passing test. Okay, that's cool. So we'll leave it at that. And so then basically this test does not belong here because we're not actually testing account. So let's copy this over to CSV Importer test. But that's going to go into the web adapter, as we said where it was going to go. Let's delete this test because we just copied it. Let's go back to here. We'll delete this test. Okay, so we're not actually dealing with account here, so this is going to be import single row CSV should result in single transaction. So we're still going to have a CSV string. We're still going to have transactions. The CSV import is going to do that. But really what we want to do here is that the transactions We can start off with having size of 1. We'll do, let's see. No, we actually know what this is going to be. So in case you haven't been noticing, I've been using, mainly because I've been using a CertJ as for a while, but also it's what Spring Boot has pretty much standardized on. So one of the nice things about CertJ is that we can do these really nice assertions. So I can basically say that this list of transactions contains exactly, and then I can go ahead and build up a new transaction with exactly what I want it to be. So the local date time is going to be of, and the year is 2018, the month is 1, and this is 5, and there's no time involved. And let's put this on a new line. And what else do we need? The action. So we're going to basically turn cash deposit into a deposit transaction. You know what? Since we know it's going to do that, let's not use this new. Let's use transaction, create deposit. And so the next thing is amounts. So remember that this int amount is scaled integer, so it's going to be 5,000. And then the source is going to be basically as is birthday gift. And then we're good. So now if we run this, it will clearly fail. We at least hope it fails. And of course it does, because it was empty, because our import does nothing. All right. Let's clean up our imports there. Okay, so let's add some space here. Okay, so what we pretty much want to do is, let's say lists of, lists as list. God, I wish they would get consistent with that. And we could just, hard code the transaction. But I'm not going to do that. So let's see, what should we do? Well, this looks ideal for our good friends Stream and Lambda. So what we want is, we basically want to do something like CSV list, right? The incoming thing. We want to stream that. And then for each one, we want to do some kind of mapping function. So map is basically a transformation. So we want to take a string, transform it to a transaction. So something like CSV Importer, transaction from CSV, something like that. And then we just collect it, and then to list. Collect list. Oh my God, I've forgotten the syntax. Let's create this. So create method transaction CSV. So the so that's a static method. That's fine. So we are basically taking a string and we are returning transactions. And we don't need that because we're not doing any further typing. So collectors to list. Yes, I can not remember everything. So what we're doing here is we're taking the list of incoming CSV rows, even if there's one, and then for each one, we're going to call this conversion transaction from CSV, right? So that basically will convert from a line of the CSV and give us a transaction. And right now that's going to return null, which is fine. So if we go back to our test, this will still fail because it will basically have a list of a null. Yes, right, so we now have a list, but the only thing in that list is a null, so that's good. And so now we want to create a transaction from this row. So what we want to do is, if we look at what the thing looks like, it looks like this. So if we split across commas, that should work fine. There is the danger that there's a comma in this description, but I know that from the data I have, there is none, so that's not a worry. Here, there could be a string. Sorry, there could be a comma. I don't think I have any. If I was worried about that, I'd probably just jump straight to implementing to using a library, not implementing it myself. But basically, there's 4 pieces: the date, the type of the transaction, the amount. That's going to be fun, converting that backwards, and then the source. So the typical way we would do that is we'd use string split. There's some other ways. Let's take a quick look. Could use a regex, but we don't need to worry about that because we don't have double quotes. So we could just do that. So we can. So one of the things I like to do when I'm searching is sometimes you'll find stuff that is old. So if we look for anything since 2017, we'll get more recent stuff. So we could use pretty much split. See what Bildung has to say. Yeah, I don't want to bring in a whole library to do that, so we could just do string split. We do have Guava already, so you know what? Let's use that. Because that's way more readable. Because the other thing is, in case you didn't notice, there's actually spaces here around the dollar amount. I'm not sure why Excel did that, but it is what it is. So I'd have to trim those out. So either I'd have to use a regex during the split. Problem is this gives me arrays, and I don't want to arrays. I guess that's okay. So I don't know. I don't have any. This seems kind of ridiculous. Like I'm going to basically stream the split stuff and then trim each one and then convert it back to an array. That seems horrible from a garbage collection object point of view. Yes, I know it might be optimized away, but I don't know if I was going to do this. I don't know why I would convert it back to a string array. I would just collect it to a list. Since we already have Guava imported, let's just do that. So we're basically going to do, I don't want to emit empty strings because I need a fixed set of things. So this is structured, even if one of these is empty. Of course, if this one's empty, we don't know what kind of transaction it is. That would be a problem. But if this is empty, that's okay. So what we want is a list of string that is CSV cells equals parse CSV row. I guess I should be consistent about what am I calling these, rows or lines? Let's call them line. Let's call them rows. Okay, so parse CSV row, and we're going to do something with it here. Basically, create transaction from cells. So the reason I'm doing it this way is from a testability standpoint. because I want to basically test, for me, doing this kind of thing and getting the components correct, getting this stuff translated properly, can be a bit of a pain to get right. So let's see, we'll split on a comma, we'll trim the results, and we can split to list, which is going to be the thing we're operating on. Oh, why is that marked as unstable? Is that new? I'm using 27. It's beta. I'll leave it. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so I can actually just return this directly. All right, and that's cool. So I could have written the test first, and I probably should have done that. So let's go ahead and do that. I mean, there's not really much to test here, but it's more sort of testing our expectations. This is sort of a throwaway test. So if given that string, we'll assert that that list of cells contains, so list of string cells equals the CSV importer. Actually, it's a static method, so CSV importer that. Yep. And what we want to use is this as our sample. And so what we expect is that it contains exactly, and so this is exactly in the order I give it to you, in the order that I give it to you, in order that I give it to the method, versus in any order. So it should be in this predefined order. It must be. So I'm going to expect that, and then cache deposit, and then so this is going to be still what's there. What happened there? So it's going to be the amount, and then birthday gift. Okay, what's going on here? Oh, I forgot to close the double quote. That was confusing. Okay, so parsing this row should give us exactly this list of strings. So let's run this method. And that worked, which is good. Again, I should have written the test first, but that's okay. So that's just basically validating that I understood how the API worked. I don't actually need to keep this test, because what I'm really interested in is that I got the transaction. So now we can move up to testing this transaction from CSV method. Actually, let's make this private since it's internal. Actually, I don't need to test this method directly. I'm testing the import from. So now we can go back to that. So what's going to happen is we're going to need to, the hard parts are converting this to a proper date and parsing it correctly. and then converting this to an int scale decimal dollar amount. So let's see. We have methods in our date formatting to basically go from a string to a local date time. And I think that is almost what we want. The problem is this one uses the dash separators and the year first. So we're going to need another one. So I think I'm going to rename this method because this one was used specifically for from the browser. So if you were in my last episode, we were pulling in information that was sent in from the browser. And the way the browser formats the dates when it uses the specific date input is it's basically 4 digits for the year, 2 digits month, 2 digits day, with a dash as a separator. So I'm going to rename this to be from browser date. Okay. Just because I'm a little paranoid, let's run all the tests. Okay, that one failed as expected, and that one failed. Okay, so we're cool. So now I'm going to have another one that's basically that returns a local date time, and this is from CSV date. And so we'll have the raw date. And so we're going to have another one of these that's going to be DD, and then Y. Is that right? Yes. And so that's just swapping this stuff around. That. And so local date goes local date, the parse, and we'll parse the raw date using this formatter. And then we return the local date as start of day because we're only using midnight. So one thing we see here is there's some common stuff. Kind of okay. I mean, I've got two methods. They're pretty straightforward. I'm going to just leave it with a little bit of duplication. And this is the format that CSV file has when exported from Excel. That's month. Separated by slashes, okay, and so back to our test. Our test is still failing, right? So we haven't done anything yet. Okay. So we've got our cells, we've converted this into basically 4 components. So what we want to do is we want to get a local date time. And that's going to be the CSV cells, the first one. Actually, we could do an iterator and then just next. But nah, we've already got a list. Let's do get 0. So this one is going to be our date. And so we're going to convert that by using the date formatting from CSV date. And then the next component is going to be the action type. So here, the possibilities are cash deposit, interest credit, what I've been calling payment, which is really a spend. So let's go back to our test. Import single row CSV deposit. Should result in single deposit transaction. So right now we're just testing deposit. We're not going to go yet overkill on all the different types because we want to do one at a time. So we now have string. Well, we'll just know that that's get 0. So basically string action or transaction type is CSV cells 1. And then the next one is we need to convert CSV cells, the third index, which is this part. We need to convert that into a scaled int. So we have this scaled decimals thing that we've used before. And let's take a look at that. So it has a way of decimal to pennies given an amount. We also have somewhere in transaction view. So this is format as money. So this basically takes an int amount and converts it to format as money. So it doesn't feel like the code belongs there. And it's really straightforward, so I'm not going to, that doesn't seem as reusable as the other one. So scale decimals, transaction view. So dollar string to scaled int, and that's that one. So we'll implement this. Okay, this is probably pretty straightforward. It's already going to be a trimmed string, and so what we can actually do is we can cheat. Since we know our data is always going to have 2 decimals, yeah, we can cheat on that. If somebody ever decides that they want to import a spreadsheet that's different than this, then that will be a bug filed, and we will add that feature. But for now, right now I'm guaranteed. So we can actually cheat. We can basically eliminate the dot, and we know where that is, and then eliminate the dollar, and then just treat it as an integer. The only problem is if there are commas. So what we can do is we can strip, I wonder if we can just strip commas, dollar signs, and dots. I'm sure there's something we can do for that. Let's see. Yeah, so we can basically use, as I figured, regex to the rescue. So we can basically do a replace all. So we can say, int string equals dollar string, replace all, and so what is it? Basically anything that is a dollar, which I think we have to escape, a comma, which I think we have to escape, and a dot, which I think we have to escape. And I always forget whether it's a double escape or not, so I think we have to double escape it because otherwise we can't put that in there. And basically replace it with nothing. Boy, I'm not sure if this is going to work, so I'm going to want to test this. So let's see, redundant escape. Maybe I don't need that. Let's run an escape. Oh, do I not need to escape these because they're inside of the brackets? Maybe. I guess we'll find out. So let's do this. Formatted $to into string. No. Remove formatting. And it's going to return a string. Let's refactor that. Okay. And so then basically it's just going to be in string. I know the names are kind of ugly. And then this is parse int. Parse integer, parse int, and this thing. And I'm just going to inline it. Oops. Okay. This is the thing I want to test because, boy, I have no idea. I don't use regular expressions often enough to be sure that this is the right thing. Again, this is a test that I'm going to write is to make sure I understand the API. So even though it looks like I'm testing replace all, in fact, I could just do that. I could just put this in a test. So let me do that. So what I really want to do is like, do I understand that I'm using this correctly? So let's go back to a test. Let's create, and this is basically a temporary test. Temp test regex. So I'm going to assert that this thing, and let's assign string $string equals 50. Well, in fact, let's do the pathological or sort of worst case. Yeah, hey, he's a millionaire. Let's actually give him $1 million. He's just got $5 million as a deposit. Woo-hoo. I'm scared to think what would actually cause that to be something real. Okay, so here I want to assert that this is equal to, so this replace all. So I expect it to actually result in basically 5 and then 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, like that. So let's run this test. Okay, so it does what I expect because if I had this wrong, we'll see that. Yeah. Okay, well, okay, that worked nicely. So now I don't need this test because this was sort of a temporary test to make sure I understood that the regex worked as expected. Okay, so this is going to convert it to cents because we basically cheated by dropping out the dollar and the comma. All we're left with is a bunch of zeros. So this $50.00 will be converted to 5,000. We'll parse it as an int. Return this back to being private. And so now we jump back up to here. So we've got the local date time. We've got the transaction type as a string. We've converted the amount to an int. And then the last thing is basically the description. Technically, we've been calling it the source, but only for deposits. Otherwise, we use description. So now this is basically just CSV cells, get, and that's the last cell. Okay, so we've basically converted these into their components, and now we can just return a new transaction. So right now we're only doing a deposit, so I'm actually going to sort of take a smaller step and just say transaction. We'll create a deposit. So local date time, amount, and description. Okay. So I think we're ready to now run our CSV import test. So now this probably passes. And it passed. Cool. Okay, so this is a single deposit. we can now test import. So multiple rows, multiple CSV deposit. Hope I could spell deposit rows should result in multiple deposit transactions. Boy, my spelling's going downhill here, which probably means I need to take a break. Oh, we're coming up on the next hour. I'm going to keep pushing on this, but I'm going to take a break in about 5 minutes or less. So let's go and grab some more of our sample data. I'm going to take, so interest credit, I'm going to have, that's going to be a separate test, but let's do these two. These are interesting because they don't have .00, they have .75. And we'll take those two transactions. So we'll say list string CSV list equals lists list, and we'll say that one. And that. So we've got two of those. And we'll convert a transaction. So new CSV importer, import from our list. And then we assign that to a variable, which is going to be our transactions. And now we can assert that transactions contains exactly. And so we have a transaction, create, deposit, local date time of. So that first one is 2018, 5, 3, and then 0, 0. And then we've got 675 is the amount. Bottle return is where it came from. So that's one transaction. And then the second transaction is also deposit, local date time of 2018, 5/24, 0 hours, 0 minutes. And that one is 775. That one's also bottle return. This one might just work because I operate on the whole thing. Let's run both tests. That all works. All unit tests. That one doesn't work because we have not hooked it up yet to the account. But that's okay, we're not there yet. Let's do a commit here. So basically implement it so we can now import deposit, import cash deposit transactions from CSV. So we haven't handled the two other cases we need to handle. One is the one that's listed as an interest credit, which is right now basically a deposit, and the other one is the spend, which is basically a spend. And I wish I would stop doing that. Okay. All right, I'm going to take a break, and I'm actually going to continue on because I want to get this story done. So where we are is we're still doing the CSV file to pre-populate. We've got deposit working. So when we come back, we're going to handle the spend, the interest credit, and then handle being able to sort of copy and paste that CSV into a web form, basically a big text area that will then load up all the transactions, and that should all work.